All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. So, we're going to talk about Mistborn, Era 1, Book 1, called The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson today. And we've got Tristram Johnson here, who has been talking with Dusty and I about Lord of Chaos, Book 6 of the Wheel of Time on Mixed Mental Arts. And we've got Woke Centrist, of course, who also does the Wheel of Time chats with us. And yeah, I'm excited. I would say you guys know that I just recently, I've been reading the Stormlight Archive Book 1, Way of Kings right now. And I do like it a lot, but I would say personally, Mistborn is still my favorite series by Brandon Sanderson so far. Although I haven't read that much of his work, I've just read Era 1 of Mistborn, most of Era 2, and Warbreaker. Other than his kind of like Wheel of Time work, basically. And I also read one of his young adult books called The Rhythmatist. So for me, so far, I would say Mistborn is my favorite of his. Yeah. So what do you guys think of the series in general? I guess for people who are not watching, basically the Mistborn, it's got the hardest of hard magic systems, as I was saying. And Vin is basically a slave. She's a ska, and she joins Kelsier's slave rebellion. And the plot centers around this awesome magic system and heists and an assassination conspiracy to kill the Lord Ruler, who's the evil leader of the society. And there's espionage and romance in there too. And it's very fast paced, and there are awesome magic battles, and it's got everything.
It's definitely fantasy heist. At least this book, definitely. And also, like you said, it's that very much that young adult female protagonist. It's all Vin. It's very much where we get the
I'd say it's like the fantasy A team, and if you do like more of these heist type of novels, I would suggest checking out Gentlemen Bastards.
Oh, the Lies of Locke Namora.
Yes,
there's the book. Yes,
I still haven't read that yet, but I know that you've got a copy of that for me to read fairly soon, Dusty. So I'll definitely get to that soon.
You definitely need to. That again is, that's a whole experience, Lies of Locke Namora. Again, extremely different.
Sweet. Yeah. So I don't know. Let's. What are some of your guys' favorite aspects of this book? I mean, for me, as often happens with books I really enjoy, I liked it even more the second time around recently than I did the first time. Like, I noticed more layers of the plot and more foreshadowing. I know I was talking to Dusty about that, and he was saying that too. And just like I was saying, my favorite aspect is just the awesome magic battles and learning how to use this magic system like some sort of combination of an art and a science, and how Vin kind of like discovers new aspects of the magic system.
Yes,
you know, it's based off of metals, and I think if I remember correctly, we discover even more metals than the 11th metal, atium, that we discover in this book. So yeah,
absolutely.
What do you guys think about those aspects, like the magic system and the magic battles?
So should we start with magic, with allomancy?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I think there's a few amazing things about allomancy that I think are absolutely top notch and that really help me love the way it's used. One is that it is magic, but some of it almost feels technologically based, right? Some of it, like you have that real feeling of there's stuff it does and there's stuff it doesn't do, and we know very clearly what's what. So that really gives it that feeling of fast paced, and it also provides a feeling of tension and fear. Like you can see, my goodness, these guys are amazing with what they do, but some of the key powers are to push and pull metal, right? and that allows a kind of telekinesis, right? But far, far more limited than you might see if you were, I don't know, dealing with a Jedi in Star Wars, for example.
Yeah.
So, like a Jedi, you're never exactly sure what they can and cannot do. And so, if they're in a bad situation, they might just make a 70-foot leap and get out of it, or they might not be able to, and we're not quite sure. With one of the coolest things about this book is the way he introduces it, that as Vin learns it, we learn it. So that's really cool because he doesn't like stop and lecture us, but as Vin learns, we naturally see what she does, which is really, really cool. And but also that it is so limited that we find out really quickly that if you do not have any of the metal inside you to burn, that's what they call it when you start using the abilities, then you can't use them. Your power can run out. And so that is really, really cool and important and comes up in the book that there are times when they don't have their cool abilities. And also then that there's another thing that you can have the power and you can not be skilled at it. And that's something else that's demonstrated and shown that actually power is really important, but the skill that you have with it is really, really cool too. Mm-hmm. And one of the last things I just want to say before I know, obviously, that Dusty will have plenty to add, but one of the other things, talking about this limitation aspect, and it seems weird that I'm saying how much I enjoyed that it was limited, but I really did. Like, I enjoyed this kind of magic a lot more than I enjoy, for example, Gandalf's magic, where, like, Gandalf probably could do everything, but he doesn't, and we're not quite sure why, which is mysterious and cool, but I enjoyed this far more. But the last thing is, you know how they do like we've talked about how this is a bit like a heist, like getting a crew together. And one of the things you like about something like, I don't know, Ocean's 11, right? Or your classic heist is you get a guy for each job, right? This is the smooth talker. This is the guy who's going to go in and pretend to be on the other team. This is the tattletale. This is the cute girl who's going to distract them or whatever it is. And so what they do here is each member of the crew has like a different role. And some of them are non-magic roles, but the ones who are magic roles are mistings. And that's just basically a short way of saying they only can use one metal. And that is, for me, that's even better, right? Because that means that he's got to be the smooth talker. But if he gets into a fight, he's done for because, like, he doesn't have no telekinesis, you know? And then there's other ones who are like, there's one guy who's just the guy who can hide them. And I just think that's really cool. And it adds a world building element that his house is where it all happens because his is the hidden house because that's what he does. And I really like that. I think Brandon Sanderson thought that through very well. And it made the engagement of the arc far more compelling for me.
Yeah, for sure. I really like that aspect you mentioned too about how some of the people are mistings and they only have one power, and then some people are full-blown Mistborns and they have all the powers. And then, like, we could talk about Allomancy versus Ferrochemy too. And I like how you have to use the magic systems to play off of each other, like to learn like the art of pushing and pulling efficiently and using those magic systems against each other. That's really cool. What do you think about that, Dusty?
Well, yeah, it's pretty complex because aside from Allomancy, we got Ferrochemy, and then, you know, the big reveal at the end where the Lord Ruler uses both, and that really comes to, like, that aspect really comes into play in the second era, where you get, like, each of the characters has a ferrochemical ability and an allomantic ability. I know one of the crazier ones is the guy who's like immortal, and he can burn gold, and he can store things in gold. And
by the way, maybe we should have mentioned that this is spoilerific, as you just noticed from Dusty there.
Oh yeah, there's going to be some spoilers here. No doubt. I don't think we're going to use major ones, but yeah, as far as like, there is a hint of a third magic system. It's not really spelled out
in this book.
In this book, but it definitely has to do with how the Steel Inquisitors are created, and how, you know, we get to hear some influence from Vin's dead brother quite a bit, which possibly can be tied to that third magic system in a way.
But we have no idea of that. We don't have a clue of that here. I mean, if you did,
yeah, we only know that there's a third magic system that governs the way that the Inquisitors are made, or how they get their powers, because we do see that they are very, like, much stronger in some aspects than a Mistborn, because they can pierce copper clouds and things of that nature.
Absolutely.
And we do get to see that Vin can do it, but it's not really explained in this book how that's possible.
Yeah.
Did you like that?
They chalk it up to talent.
So did you like that aspect, that there was quite a few things in the Final Empire that are hinted at but never explained in this book? Did you like that, or did you find that frustrating as a book?
Well, there's some things that aren't even explained in the series. Like, some of the things that happen aren't even explained until you read Secret History. And a lot of that has to do with, like, the power of the mists. I know in, like, the third book they do really get into the mists a bit, but it's not actually explained until you read Secret History on how the mists work and everything.
And I know we're not going to go into that, but did you find that satisfying or frustrating?
When I very first read it, I was a little bit frustrated because it felt like I didn't really understand what was going on, especially with the final battle, because we do see that she does some things that aren't explained at the time to defeat the Lord Ruler. So at the time, it seemed to me like a Deus Ex Machina. Like, how the hell did she do this? Like, it didn't really explain it. And the funny thing is, it doesn't really explain it until the third book, and then you're like, oh crap, he had this thing planned out pretty well.
But when it's brilliant. It's brilliant. I love that. I love that sort of aspect personally. Like, there's this really, really hard magic system with really strict rules, but then we find out, oh, it's a little different from the way you thought it is, and the reason that you can or can't do this thing or the other thing is for a different reason than we thought, maybe, and maybe there's even more to this magic system than we thought there was. And like I was saying before, it's like you both were just saying, that the way that Brandon Sanderson crafts it, where you notice when you reread it all of these little seeds that he's planted that sprout and become full-blown trees by the third book, especially if you read Secret History, as you said, Dusty. It's just so brilliantly constructed in that way. And in terms of the magic system too, I was thinking, do you guys want to sort of review a little bit the different types of metals and the different powers that can be used?
I think it's probably better.
What is it? I'll quiz you, because I want to see if you remember, like, the categories here. So
I really
Andrew,
don't remember that much detail.
You've got all the medals are split.
Me? I'll let you fill in the blanks, Tristram, because I really don't remember
go for it, Andrew. This is good.
Detail.
Right.
So I know
we're gonna test.
Okay,
we're gonna test you.
I know there are 11 metals, including atium, and let's see. There's.
Well, here, I'll give you the questions for each of those, and you can see if you could. So, what is a pewter arm? Or a thug?
See, I'm already confused. Like, even though they
it's the same thing.
Even though they use that all the fucking time in the. Are you asking me, like, what power it has?
Yeah. What metal do they do, and what does that?
Yeah.
What does that do?
That I don't remember whether that does that allow them. No, I'm confusing that with like the power where you throw a coin and you can, like, push off of that and push off of buildings and stuff.
That's different. So if you want a corresponding character would be Ham.
Okay.
So what
Ham
can
is a
Ham
Peter
do?
arm.
God damn it.
Okay, we'll help you out here. So Ham is a
I can't
thug,
believe I'm
Peter
not
arm.
remembering this right now.
So
A
Peter
thug is
gives you
basically,
physical.
yeah, a thug is just basically like a really awesome fighter. The reason that is because Peter gives them strength and endurance. It allows them to brush off wounds that would normally be fatal and to continue fighting. So it's an external. Is that external or internal? I forgot.
It's external because it has an outward effect.
Yeah, so a thug or a Peter arm is someone who burns Peter, and it's a strength and endurance. It's for physical fighting. I think the other one you alluded to, Andrew, was a coin shot.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking it was. That's why I wasn't remembering like what type of metal that corresponds to, if any.
They're all, the thing is they're all balanced. So pewter is like physical, and tin is like senses, and
Yeah.
so your physical abilities are very different from your sense abilities. And you just talked about a steel coin shot. Well, if you've got iron, because obviously steel is an alloy of iron. Iron is, you can pull on metals. Steel, you can push on metals. And
Right.
Yeah.
so the steel guys are called coin shots because they're pushers, and the iron, which is the original metal, are lurchers because you lurch towards the iron. And the idea is if someone tries to throw metal at you, you can lurch it out the way. And I,
Okay. So,
whereas
sorry, I'm thinking of a few examples within the book. Like, obviously, you see Kelsier and Vin. They're like flying around using the coin shot power and jumping off of buildings all of the time. And then there are those awesome parts where Kelsier is using that power to like basically I forget what exact metal object it is, but it's this one metal object that he uses to kill like 10 people. And then
So it's like an ingot of some sort.
creates this like giant maelstrom of metal objects that are going around and attacking and simultaneously distracting his enemy.
Yeah, so that's like all of the powers have a dichotomy. So if you look at, there's another couple that we could talk about, like the soothers and rioters.
Yes.
Yeah. Because now we're getting, instead of like physical stuff, which those first four were, now we're going to like emotional. And one of the cool things is the way that's because she has soothed unconsciously in her life. She calls it luck at first. It's like the first ability she realizes that she has, and that's brass, which is an alloy of zinc. And so zinc is rider, where you can inflame emotions, and brass is a soother, where you can dampen emotions down. One of the things I did not expect was that the soothers can make you feel things by dampening down the opposite. I'm like, oh, that's clever. That's clever. Because the character we're introduced to is not really a rioter. The suit guy. Breeze. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And Breeze gets you to do what he wants, but he doesn't do it by. It isn't like in another person's book, right? He'd just be a telepath, and he'd be like, "Get me a drink," and so you'd get him a drink. But he isn't a telepath. What he does is he soothes down your angry emotions, so you're feeling good, because all your negative emotions are just being dampened away. It's like, I feel peaceful and happy, and then he's like, "Hey, will you get me a drink?" And you're like, "You know what? Of course I'm going to get you a drink, Breeze, because I feel great." And it's not mind control. And again, this is the idea of how I prefer this magic system with its limitations to just being able to have a telepath who can control people's minds. I think this is much. It's much cleverer for me. And I had you said that we first think this, and then as Dusty explained, we find out more and more and more and more. But the thing that's cool about that for me is that he doesn't lie to us. But sometimes we can believe wrong things because the characters believe wrong things.
Yeah, like Kelsier does a few times at least, right?
Well, absolutely. But realistically, And so that I find that really adds to the mystery and the interest of the magic system. And but I love Sooths and Riders. Fantastic idea. Anyway, sorry, Dusty, you were talking.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so we also got well, I wouldn't call it the last pair, but we got Smokers and Seekers.
Yeah, which is very important because, like you mentioned about like smokers can hide people, but you said that one of the things that gives us the clue that there's a third magic system is that like the Inquisitors can pierce it.
Yeah, the Inquisitors can pierce it, and we see that Vin pierces it.
Yeah.
You guys want to elaborate a little further for people who don't know about the Inquisitors there too?
Oh, Inquisitors are like
nightmare
fuel.
Yeah, they don't really get explained till like the further books. Like,
can we just say what they look like and what they're like in book one? Because I think what they're like in book one is a good thing to talk about. So, just from the aspect of book one, what was your impression of Inquisitors?
Well, typically they're shaved. They look like the other dudes, whatever their names are. I forgot their names.
Oh, you mean the Obligators?
Yeah, they're basically Obligators, but they're like evil Sith versions with their eyes pretty much replaced with iron spikes.
Yeah, that's
cool. Yeah, let's be clear. These are like foot-long iron spikes that go through their eye, stick out the back slightly, and so instead of an eye, you have a giant end of a giant train spike looking at you from both their eyes. Just to be clear,
so it looks like they're staring at you with like round discs of metal.
I'm gonna look at a picture of an Inquisitor right now and then screen share it.
Yeah, do it. Cool. But just
they're also.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, because they're also pierced with other spikes, as we find out towards the end of the book, when Marsh disables the other Inquisitors there. But
Marsh is one of my favorite characters.
Love Marsh.
Marsh, yeah, he's pretty cool.
I'd say my favorite in book one though is Kelsier. I'm sad that he dies and he's not in the other books.
Oh, Kelsier, he is just crazy.
He's inspirational, yeah.
But one thing about the Inquisitors though, I just want to this is a vibe I got, and I want to know what you think. Like when they first introduced the Inquisitors, right? They were so badass, like so tough, like they could do everything and they could like beat anybody. And like at the beginning part, even Kelsier, who's like the best Mistborn anyone's heard of, has to run away from them, right? Like he can survive an encounter with them, and people are like, you can survive? You can run away from these guys? My goodness, you're awesome. And I got like a real Matrix vibe. You know, like how in the first Matrix film. Yeah, but in the first film, right? Idea of like facing an agent is done so well. Like these guys are just impossible to beat. All you can do is run away from them and hide from them. And then when at the end he's able to face one down, you're just like, oh my goodness, that's so freaking awesome. Yes. And that is exactly the feeling, just speaking for myself here, that I got from the Steel Inquisitors. I was just like, no wonder everyone is terrified of these guys. They can't be taken. But there's a promise there, isn't there? That at some point in this book, someone's going to have to turn around, crack his knuckles, and take on an Inquisitor. And I'm like, I want to see that go down. I want to see that go down. And Brandon just paid that off. He paid it off.
Yeah, you're making me think of Morpheus. Everyone who has ever faced an agent has died. But someday, someone is going to have to fight them.
Yeah, they really did set that up, though. In the beginning, that the agents or that the Inquisitors are basically to be avoided or are unbeatable.
Yeah. Let me do a screen share here. I found a pretty cool picture of an Inquisitor.
They're nightmare fuel. They're badass. They don't die.
Yeah, it's pretty gross.
Yeah, they're gross.
There are some people that have like the phobias of like they can't see people's eyes getting messed with. Yeah. And it's almost like they wouldn't be able to watch like a screen adaptation of this.
Can you see this guy?
Brandon did it on purpose. I mean, like, look at that. Oh my goodness.
That's so cool.
It is. And
Yeah.
like the thing is that whole idea of just like soulless and they're like, are they human still? There's that feeling, isn't there? Like even from the beginning of the book when we don't know a lot, like their humanity is in question.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, we
It's so
definitely learn
cool.
that there's like some animosity between them and the regular obligators when they
Yeah.
do kind of like a coup. And it's funny because like the throughout the whole book, it seems like the Lord Ruler is just like super flippant and really doesn't care much of anything,
Yeah. That's
except
interesting though, isn't it? Because one of the things that Brandon has said is that one of the reasons he did the Final Empire was he said, I want to show what happens if Voldemort won. You know, I
mm,
want to show
Yeah,
that we're like, what if the super cool kid who grew up to become the legend didn't win the final battle with Voldemort? Voldemort won instead, and he ruled the world. And like it's really interesting because there's commentary here on a lot of things. Like one of the reasons it's called the Final Empire is he thought it was the last one. He's like, I'm in charge now. I'm immortal. There will never need to be another king. So what's going to go wrong? And if you look at when a lot of empires in our own world have fallen, it's in succession, right? It's when a new person comes in and they're not secure. It's when the powerful ruler gets old and people are like, right, now he's weak. We can get him. And basically, the final emperor, the Lord Ruler, never becomes old, never becomes weak, keeps all the best powers for himself, and has an invincible army or two. And there's we haven't talked about it, but like in the books, there's actually snippets of the hero's journey, like his journals, that are given
mhm.
in each chapter. And
yeah,
at first we don't know what they are, and then we realize, oh, it's, and then we get led to believe that this is the Lord Ruler before he was the Lord Ruler. You know, that
yeah,
it was the hero of ages. And it's interesting that in one of them he like says something like, "I might be the villain." Like he actually says it. Like I wonder, like if people knew that I doubt myself, would they like believe in me still? But they tell me I'm the prophesied one. And then there's one where he's like, I can't quote it directly, so please no one correct me. But he's like, I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but I've got the armies.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
That's so Roman, right?
That's yeah.
Julius Caesar
That's
and you know those guys. It's like I got the armies,
yep,
I got the powers, so I
yep.
guess I'm right.
That like that's such a prevalent theme in like people with a lot of power just in general in fiction or nonfiction like history. The people who have the power determine like how reality is interpreted, how history is interpreted. And you were making me think just now about the Dune series too, because like there's a theme that kind of repeats itself in the original Dune series, which I recently read, and like there are more than one character other than just Paul Atreides in the first Dune book. Also, his son and like grandson, thousands of years later, Leto, and at least one other character, they literally become gods, but even they are not infinitely powerful, and they can't rule forever, even though the prescience, the power that they have, allows them to see every possibility of what happens. And but it still doesn't give them absolute knowledge of things, because they still don't know absolutely what's going to happen, and they still end up either giving up or losing their power. And it's like, it reminds me of like something that Gandalf says in The Lord of the Rings, which is more clearly spelled out in the books than the movies, that even though even though Gandalf is basically the equivalent of a god or kind of like a
An
demigod,
angel.
even the creatures like him in Lord of the Rings, they can't know absolutely 100% what the outcome events are going to be. Even they get surprised sometimes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, one of the themes too I wanted to touch on, um, and it's kind of, I guess it's kind of pervasive through the whole book as well, as one of Kelsier's sayings is, "There's always another secret."
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that is his favorite phrase. It's
yeah,
always a
so
secret.
the entire plot that actually comes to an end, it's interesting because he didn't tell anybody what he was actually planning,
Yeah.
and we
Even
only
his own
find out
team.
about it. Yeah, his own team doesn't even know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like, we kind of get an overview of what's supposed to happen. Like, oh yeah, the army, we're supposed to take the garrison, and they did it, but not in the way that it was planned,
Yeah,
which is
and the main army's dead, isn't it? Like he builds up this army that they said that he's been telling them that's the main plan, the army in the caves, and then obviously
Mhm.
the army in the caves goes off and gets decimated for almost no gain, and then obviously it's all done in a, as I said, unexpected and delightful manner. Dusty, I think the fact that you've just brought that up and there's always another secret. I think we should talk about Kelsier's character. I think we need to if we're
For
going to talk
sure.
about the book because Kelsier, this is his book, right? Him and Vin,
Yeah.
and so what are your impressions of Kelsier? Do you think is he a good character? Do you think Brandon used him successfully? What are your opinions on Kelsier as a character?
Well, I know they tried to. Well, everyone tried to pass him off as crazy, and I actually don't think he actually was crazy.
No, I
Um,
don't either.
yeah,
You don't
because
think
they would all.
Capstan broke him?
Well, I think he was pissed off, but I don't think he went insane.
Yeah,
Because
angry,
this
not
is
insane.
yeah,
Well,
this was like
especially when
an
we
ex-
find out what his real plan was, right?
well, it was an extremely elaborate revenge plot. So
Yeah.
his main, like, he didn't care about anything really except giving it to the Lord Ruler, taking
Yep.
it to him.
He cares a
Um,
little bit about the scar.
he
Yeah.
does, but like his main objective is to get revenge on the Lord Ruler.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree with that entirely.
And what
Uh,
is it? The I forget what it is, but we find out at one point because he thinks that his wife betrayed him because
Nair.
the only one who could have done so when they
Yeah,
get when they get captured, right? But then I forget what it is that we find out later that I think it might have been Vane that points out that it wasn't necessarily his wife who betrayed him.
yeah, because
well, it's
they
because the piercing of because he could detect the allomancy, and if they
correct.
could detect it, then they would have made it would have made them out. Like if they were storming the castle, and one of them can channel, and channel. One of them, one of them can use
Not really
allomancy,
done.
and they could bring like a smoker with them. It wouldn't matter because the Lord Ruler can pierce copper clouds, and so could the Inquisitors for some respect. I don't know how powerful the Inquisitor copper cloud piercing. It's probably not that strong, but we know for sure that the Lord Ruler could do it, and that would give them away.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I like, Andrew, you said that Kelsey was your favorite character. Why was that? Like, why did you love that
I
character in this book?
I would say mostly because he's kind of this like almost morally gray badass motherfucker who's so powerful and can go around and decimate a bunch of bad guys. And he also, as we learn more about his backstory, he
Mm-hmm.
becomes a more complex character, and we get more reasons for what he's doing, why he's so involved with the rebellion, to do with, and we get more about the relationship with his brother and the tragedy of what happened to his wife, and all of that. So
Yeah.
I guess those are like the main reasons why he's probably my favorite character in this book.
One of the things
Yeah.
I would just say on Kelsier is that Kelsier, like I guess you just touched on it. He's like a bad person, right? I'm just gonna say it. I think Kelsier's a bad guy. He is a bad guy. He is like, if you're in my way, I will straight up kill you. And he is motivated, like Dusty said, even though he's prepared to do good things, he is more than happy to trample over the corpses of the minor people in order to achieve his ends.
Yeah.
And in a way, he was. absolutely needed to be like that to succeed in this particular fight. You had to be willing to do that, to go where he went. I like to think that Mayor did betray him, because I actually think people under that kind of pressure betraying each other is realistic. I think that could happen to me. And the fact that that doesn't mean that she's an irredeemable evil person, I don't think it does mean that. You can under the pressure of life and death, you can make decisions that are not wise, and not be an irredeemable piece of scum. And I like that because he didn't treat her like that, even if she had been the one who betrayed him. And we're not exactly sure if they did or didn't. We now know it's possible that she did. But I like it that he did that Brandon did that he put a character who in many, many books would be the villain, who would be like the one who you're supposed to like not like, like the League of Shadows in Batman, right? That they're like the villains, even though they're like trying to do something good, but they're doing it in a villainous way. But he is straight up like the second hero of this story, even though he has a lot of characteristics that are straight up villain. And I just think that's a really interesting take on the anti-hero model, because it's mingled with the mentor role that he plays for Vin, and it's mingled with the well-meaning psychopath role as well. And so I just think that is why, for me, I think Kelsier is an amazing character. I think and I also think he is a test run a little bit at Hoid. For those of you who are more aware of the wider Cosmere, we can see that Hoid has some of this. If I need to burn a few worlds to the ground in order to get what I need done, just to be clear, I'll be doing that. And
we also have to remember that Hoid showed up in this book briefly.
Well, of course he did, because that's Brandon's thing, isn't it? That he loved the idea, even before he ever became a big writer, of this idea that maybe there's someone in the background who is in all my favorite series. Like there's a guy in, the Wheel of Time, and there's a guy who's on Spooks, and they're all actually world hoppers who are just like, there's like a secret sub story. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, in future days. And I don't want to distract from today's topic.
No, and Dusty, I was just thinking that we find out that more and more about the Dresden Files as it progresses too, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's certainly true.
Yeah. That's
no spoilers on Dresden, people. No spoilers on Dresden. I'm not finished.
No, we won't get into spoilers. That's interesting. I didn't consider that perspective about Kelsier's wife. That's interesting. And
if you think about it, Andrew.
Sorry.
Like I was gonna say too about that specific aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Sanderson kind of tries to pad that a little bit by comparing Vin's relationship in the part where she felt she was scorned by Elend. Because we do see that even though it is, I think we believe, and for the most part, Kelsier seems to believe he was betrayed, but then he also says that even though that's the case, he didn't care because he loved her.
Yeah.
So
and that's what
that act itself that he believes in, that didn't deter him. Like that didn't turn off the love faucet. Like it was still there, and he had very strong feelings for her, even though, but then again, she got thrown in Hassin too, and she got killed before his eyes. So, that's definitely going to scar him, whether she betrayed him or not.
Yeah.
I just think it's realistic, right? Like I know people who I absolutely adore, people in my family, people amongst my friends, who have let me down. I mean, never to the extent of betraying me to the Lord Ruler, but they've let me down at times. And one of the things I found is I still care about these people, okay? And actually, in most cases, even though that can be heartbreaking, in the end, it's been good for me to still care. And I think it's one of the things that shows that Kelsier is not just a soulless beast, that he is a man, and that he doesn't just like go on like random rampage killings for no reason. The Lord Ruler has especially garnered his ire by the way he's behaved and how he's treated him. But there are people that Kelsier clearly loves, and I believe that Kelsier genuinely is fond of Doxson and Vin in particular, and he shows that he's prepared to do a lot for them. And I think that's great, right? That you can have a guy who is cold and hard and dark, but actually there's some cold, hard, and dark people in our own world, but they're not all dark. There's people, they still have a cat that they love, or a dog that they go home to and would do anything for. They're still loyal to their boss or whatever. And I think that's a really good message to put out there, that there's different kinds of people, and some people need to be hard and their lives have made them hard, but it doesn't mean that they don't love anybody and that they don't care about anybody. And that's a good message, I think, from this book.
Yeah, it's a
Those
perfect
are other thing you have to consider too when talking about Kelsier versus how other people operate. We got to remember that Vin had been in other thieving crews, and when she joined Kelsier's, she just could not believe that they operated off of trust and not fear.
Yeah.
So I thought that was a big thing as well. Like, I can't really consider him evil in that case, because typically when you're talking about evil characters, they don't have that trust and love for their colleagues, and we can definitely see that Kelsier has that for his colleagues.
Yeah, it's important to him, right?
It's really important, but evil's very broad, and there's definitely people there's definitely people who are, I guess I would define as on the dark side, who use love and affection and support as part of their modus operandi, not just fear. Like, and actually, if you look, for example, and I'm just going to use the most obvious one, Hitler, right, who many people don't think was a good political leader, was adored by his inner circle, adored, like not just liked, and he did give them trust, and he did delegate to them power and gave them rewards. And
I'll say up to a point.
Yeah.
Because when there was up to a point where that was the case, but as soon as the Germans started losing, there was a lot of secret dissent amongst his top people.
Absolutely.
So,
that's true.
And then he was very authoritarian and started killing his own people because he thought they were betraying him and imprisoning them.
And I would very much like to see what would happen to Doxson if Kelsier found him betraying him. I'm just saying, dead Doxson. I don't think Kelsier would like even hesitate. You're like, you're betraying me, Dox. There's a piece of metal through your brain. Not anymore.
Maybe.
It's
hard to say. It's hard to say. Maybe. I don't know.
But this is great, right? It's great that we have at least somewhat of a slightly different opinion, because it shows that the character is complex enough, that it's human enough, that you can actually have multiple interpretations of the same guy. And
he's great. Definitely gray. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, his justification for killing like random ska in the noblemen's keeps is that they're weak and that they're kowtowing to the nobleman. And we do see he has, like, in the very beginning, has a blind hatred for noblemen. He has kind of a good reason to do that, because we do find out, well, when we go to the plantation ska and see how their life is, and we find out about like how unimportant and how expendable they are, and then we find out how the women are treated. It's just fucking crazy and horrible. And then
literally
that can warp you. And he was in the worst of the worst. He was in the pits that hath sin. And then he's seeing these plantation ska being extremely mistreated. So he can't seem to trust noblemen at all. Like,
and fair enough. Fair enough.
And
but he does see the light, though. He sees the light. Like, Vin convinces him that, hey, not all of these people are bad, and he does see that, and he does say, okay, this Ellen guy's okay. I'm not going to kill him.
I'm not going to kill him.
Yeah. That's actually related to what I was just thinking about, because you mentioned earlier, Tristram, about how Kelsier is okay with killing anyone if he thinks they're on the wrong side, right?
Yeah.
And he has that sort of moral disagreement with Marsh, and just like how you were talking about how Kelsier he promotes this trust among his crew. It's similar to how Marsh still he still clearly loves Kelsier as a brother, even though he used to be basically philosophically where Kelsier is in terms of his thoughts about the use of violence towards their goal of slave rebellion, basically. But then his moral philosophical perspective on that change, and he sees that, you know, not everyone who's on this side is like 100% evil, as we also see when Vin gradually gets involved with Elend, right?
Mm-hmm. And like, I'm gonna say something, but I'm just gonna say it as a single sentence, and we're not gonna go into it because it's just a minefield, right? Because of the week that this is. But I can't not say it. Like, sometimes when I see families disagree over things like, shall we say, politics, you can see people blow up at each other over, like, if they're red or blue, or anyway, we're definitely not going to get into that. But the point is, I think Brandon has shown here with Martian and Kelsier, that kind of thing, right? Two brothers, they both want a good thing for their future. They have a different political way of looking at life and about how that should be achieved. And yet they can function together. And I think that's really powerful. And I think that's a message that I think Brandon would quite like that message to be one that people receive. That even if me and you disagree quite fundamentally, we can work together on something that is right. And I think that's a powerful message for all of us.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, Dusty and I talk about the importance of that message all the time in terms of in terms of politics and the way we live our lives and interact with people. Like, that we should be able to have disagreements with people without like disowning them and cutting them out of our lives. Unfortunately, has happened to me with a few people, which I would never do to someone. But yeah, that's a very good message that Brandon Sanderson conveys in the book.
He does, and not by preaching it, by showing it.
Yeah.
It's not like a lecture. It's like Kelsier stops and goes, "By the way, ladies and gentlemen, you should not cut off your family." You just see it in the action. Show, don't tell. So are we? I think we probably need to talk at some point about Vin and Elend, right?
Of course, yeah.
So how do you want to go about it?
Well,
do you want to do the character of Vin?
Well, people
people
have described their relationship as like Les Mis or something like that. I've never read Les Mis, so there must be some type of parallel there.
Well, I don't think so. But then again, like, all I'm saying is, like, I understand what they're saying, because it's the educated nobleman and the girl who's living on the streets. But the girl in Les Mis, let's just say she doesn't become like an immortal emperor killing machine. I'm just going to throw that out there. I think it's a little different. But no, what do you think of Vin as a character, as a protagonist? Do you think Brandon gets that? Do you think he portrays her well, considering she's a teenage girl and he's a middle-aged man? What are your thoughts? Is Vin a good protagonist?
I would say so. Yeah.
What do you like about it then?
I like her, like how they throughout all these like intense and stressful events that are happening, she's kind of like maturing and growing up a little bit, and she's getting over that that thing that I forget that guy's name, but the guy, I guess it was probably her brother or whoever. No, whoever it was who ran her like crew when she was a thief, basically. Sorry,
Cayman is the crew leader.
Cayman, yes. Like how he basically had that line that you should be a person. You should try to avoid drawing attention to the fact that you're a girl. And then throughout this espionage plot where she's infiltrating the like the upper aristocratic level of society that is loyal to the Lord Ruler. She has to dress more like a woman to get the attention of young suitors, and so she kind of grows up. She kind of accepts the fact that she's a woman more, and she also like matures emotionally as well.
I unashamedly love that plot. Unashamedly love it.
And of course, like my favorite aspect that I love even more about how like she's as you mentioned the hero's journey earlier, and she's definitely like the protagonist of the hero's journey. She has these amazing powers. She's the chosen one. She ends up being even more powerful than she thought, and she ends up being even more powerful than Kelsier, and she figures out aspects of the magic system that no one knew, and she ends up being even more of a badass than Kelsier.
Yeah, well, agreed. And Dusty, what was your thoughts like on Vin?
I thought it was well done, particularly the transition from street urchin to infiltrator, because she was having a very tough time, just like in the very beginning, working with that crew. A lot of time, like and then she got herself into some big trouble because when she was with Cayman, being of use, you were either useful or you were dead.
Yeah,
and she still had that mentality coming into the Kelsier's crew. And when she got laid up by the Inquisitor, she is very anxious about being useful, and that's another reason she went out and spied on Kelsier, because she just didn't want to be because there were a lot of times where she went to the balls and Sayzed got just about the same information that she got and more, so she felt like she wasn't really gaining anything. And then Kelsier would go out and about and also gain some intel through his means, and it typically was the same information or better. So she felt like as a useless member of the crew, and at that point she felt that that was like a life or death thing, which got her into trouble when she insisted on going to Kelsier to the Lord Ruler's place, and got really messed up by those Inquisitors. But eventually she finds out that, oh man, these people are friends here.
Yeah, they just treat her so differently.
Care about each other.
You mentioned Sayzed too. It would be a great idea to go into Sayzed more, because he's a really interesting character. And as you pointed
out, religion, Sayzed and religion. Religion is a big thing about
the religion of the world. Yeah.
But just let's like do Vin and Elend, and then let's do Sayzed. Because when we do Sayzed, we've got to do Farukami, and then that'll be like a whole extra conversation.
For sure. Go into it, man.
But no, I just want to say I really appreciate what you said there, Dusty, because you've really brought to my attention something that I didn't maybe think of, which is that like one of the greatest things about Vin, and again, you touched on it, Andrew, is her progression. And the fact that she doesn't just, I tried to write a book like when I was a teenager, okay? And in my book, the team that I want to meet up, they meet up and they're like in a pub, in an inn, and they're like, we should all be friends and go on an adventure together. And so they just all make friends and go on an adventure together. And I didn't realize how unbelievably impossible cliche that was as a youth. I was just like, that's what I want to have happen. That's what was happened. And when he introduced her, and she's so cautious, she hardly speaks. She listens only. And she's like afraid of leaving anything around anywhere in case she's attacked. And like, and what Dusty said about how bit by bit she realizes that she's in a new world here, and not everyone treats everybody that way. And she just starts to very slowly just open up this shell. That is amazing to me. And I think it was done really, really well. And I think that story could be being told about a young girl in a new high school. Yeah. The fantasy aspect, it was very realistic to me. Despite the fantasy aspect. When she, one of the other things is, I think Vin is a very powerful female character. I think she's got very realistic teenage angst, because there's very unrealistic teenage angst in lots of books I've read that makes me just want to shoot myself. where like they just like the girl in the book is just literally 100% obsessing over this boy every single moment of every single day, and I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. And other times when like girls are just so horrible to each other, and all they do is they seem to spend their entire lives plotting around ruining the life of this one girl. And again, I just don't believe it. People have other things to do with their lives. They'll ruin your life on their break, you know? And so I feel that she has angst, but it's very realistic and understandable. And it's well explained right from the beginning that she's had this horrible life and why that's led her to this. And then it's broken, but not instantly. And even in future books, we still see that she's getting over that, stab first, run first mentality. And I absolutely adore that the subterfuge plot of having her be Valette Renux. I just think that's absolutely fantastic. By the way, I speak French. I lived in France for 2 years, and a lot of this, I won't go into it, but I love all the French that is in this. And it's clear that actually it's possible on Scadular speaking a language closer to French than English. Obviously, we're getting the translated version because Kelsier is a French name. Vin is vin. We don't use the French pronunciations, but it's very clear. Renu, it's all French words, and so I really like that aspect. Just throwing that out there. But when she turns up to the ball, and she's so out of place, and it's like a different kind of challenge. So Kelsier has been training her to like shoot metal through the sky and like fly, and then she goes to say Zed, and he's like, "This is how you eat with a dinner fork." I just love that. I was like, because if you were doing true espionage, like it's a different kind of challenge. You can't just beat this one into submission. It doesn't matter how fast you are or how strong. You've got to be slick. You've got to be able to listen. You've got to be able to pull off a charming smile. And I just think that's awesome because so much of the con is about that. And when she comes to that very first ball and she doesn't have a clue what she's doing, and she goes and finds a nobleman who knows exactly what to do and is deliberately not doing it just to suck it to the team. Like that's just perfect for me because he's a good guy. Like I'm going to share a personal experience. I come from a church where we don't drink. Okay, like no, in my church, no one drinks. We're teetotal. But my dad was like a bishop in my church. He was like a priest. And one of my sisters, when she was like in a rebellious phase, she went to a dance at church and pretended to be stinking drunk, deliberately to embarrass my dad, to deliberately say, I am not going to conform, right? But she wasn't really drunk because she wasn't prepared to rebel properly. She wanted to still keep her moral code, but like stick it to the man. And that's what I think of Ellen. Ellen's like, here I am rebelling by not dancing and reading a book instead.
Yeah,
I'm going to be deliberately not very well tailored just to wind up my dad. But it's not really rebelling. And I just think that spoke to me of how young he is. Even though he's educated, even though he's in some ways better than can be possibly thought, it just shows that I love Allende. I love Allende. I see a lot of myself in Allende. I really resonate with him, that he's really well-meaning, but in some ways a little bit helpless. That's totally how I feel about life. I'm a nice guy, but I often don't make anything happen, and that's okay. And I totally would go to a party and like not really know how to engage with the popular kids, and I would sit on the edge and read my book and hang out with the two people that I knew well, and we'd talk about books or computer games. And so I just think Brandon did something very clever there, that he did this espionage plot that she had to act and do all that. But he also, I bet there's a lot of teenagers who read this and feel like, yeah, I did feel out of place at my prom, like wearing a fancy dress when I never do. Or I did feel out of place at that party and I didn't feel like I mixed. I didn't want to be antisocial, but I wasn't really there. And then to find each other and then build that relationship over several weeks was super cool. And I know some people don't particularly like the romance. They think Brandon's romance is too simple and too like childlike, too clean, not rompy enough or passionate enough. But I really liked it. I really liked it. And one of the things I really liked is, of course, that he's fallen in love with a false person, but
Yeah,
that had hints of a real person. And I love the fact that Vin can end up liking dresses and some of the very girly things, but doesn't for even a millisecond lose who she is, which is the badass fighter, street thief. And she
yeah,
retains that even in the future. You can like frilly things and still be a rock solid, powerful, strong woman. And I think that is a useful message.
yeah. Well said, man. That's like a truly well executed, strong female character.
I think so. I
She's
think so.
like one criticism that I've heard
Yeah, go
um
on.
people say before of like strong female characters like Wonder Woman or something like that is that they're strong female characters, but they seem like masculine in a lot of their aspects. Like they don't
Yeah,
seem like a woman. They don't seem feminine really. And she
yeah.
can be like a badass killer and still be a woman too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think essentially female, because some of her her concerns and her feelings are extremely female. You know, she had a brother, her connection to her mother, and like she does fall for a pretty boy, and but that doesn't emasculate her whatsoever. It doesn't like remove her choices. It doesn't remove her agency, and it doesn't remove her power. And there's never any question that like if she needs to, she could just turn the end upside down and bang him on the floor by his head.
Yeah.
Like like there's not even like the remotest competition. She is the badass in this relationship, but she needs him. He fulfills a valuable function in that he helps that softening. He shows her that nobles can be good, and through her affects even Kelsier.
Yeah.
And then obviously that has huge implications for future books. But one of my favorite bits about Elend is, and again I resonate with this, is at the end he tries to go and rescue her, and like
Yeah.
you're like Elend, you can't rescue her, but he goes anyway, and
Yeah.
that's what that's like I couldn't rescue anyone. I'm a physical weakling, but I'd like to believe that I would try, that I
Yeah.
would go anyway, and I think Elend is the moral compass of the book.
Yeah. Well said, man. Totally.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like, I mean, look at me, right? I am literally a weakling, but I don't care. I know where my heart is and I know where my mind is, and I do not judge myself on that fact. And I think Brandon's very clever because he could have made Elend a badass, right? He could have. You just write that in there. He's also freaking solid, but he
Yeah.
isn't. And I think it's
That's
fantastic.
actually why I like Elend more in book one than the other books. I actually like him less when he gets more powerful.
Yeah, I absolutely buy that. I absolutely buy that. And one of the things is, of course, that yeah, it's how they use that, which is interesting.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, I really like the romance. I know some people think it's too tame, some people think it's too easy, but I didn't find it that way. Just speaking personal choice.
Yeah. What did you think of that aspect, Dusty?
I think we just dropped him.
Oh, did we?
I think he's gone through one of those bits in
Oh,
his
okay.
round where he loses connection.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, actually, you mentioned there. Actually, no. When you were talking about how Ellen goes to rescue Vin, it was reminding me of how Marsh actually rescues her, and we see his awesome fucking powers used. That's such a cool part of the book.
Yeah, when like say Zed comes when she's done that thing where she's gone out to like follow Kelsier, but Kelsier can get himself out, but doesn't know that she's even come. So she bumps into Inquisitor and she's way outmatched. And then suddenly Sazed, who's been this prim and proper butler, you know. It's just I like the terracemen, and they're all servants, and they're all very correct. And basically, what we know about them is that they're high-powered servants. Like, wow, if you can afford a terrace butler, you're doing well. They're like pretty exclusive, and we know that like he's a eunuch, and just like all that. We just know that they're from like a bit of a slightly separate race, and all he's done is like taught her dinner manners, right? We know they're kind of special, but not really. And then suddenly, he just like legs it up and like from nowhere just gets her, and it's clear that this is magic because you're like, how did you do that? You were not there, and then you were there. Did you teleport? And he rescues her so quickly. And you're like, you can do what? We don't know anything about this. What the crap is happening?
What is that? What is that specific magic he used? Is it?
He's steel. He's burning steel, and not burning, but he's in. We should just explain to those watching. Furukami, like allomancy, goes off metals. But what they do is instead of burning the metal, where they get it for like free, if you have the metal, you use up the metal's power, they have to balance it out. So you do without it for a while, and then you store that attribute in the metal. And then when you want to pull it back out, you can. So one of the examples is wakefulness. And I just think this would be the most awesome power, is that you can, when you're tired, you can store your tiredness, or you can store your wakefulness and sleep. Because like, all my wakefulness is gone, have it all. But then when you want to be awake, you can take it all back, and it's like several shots of Red Bull, like caffeine to the top, and you've got that full wakefulness. So storing wakefulness is so cool. Storing speed is one you can do as well. So you can go slowly for a prolonged period of time where your muscles are moving, but you're going deliberately slower, and your speed gets stored in steel. And then you can exchange that speed at once. Now, one of the disadvantages of Furukami is it has to have this balance, but it has an advantage over allomancy. Allomancy, you burn it, you get a certain amount of power. That's what happens. With Furukami, I might have been going slightly slow for 12 months. And then I can burn all of that in a day to go fast. Or I can burn it in an hour to go 24 times that fast. And then I could burn it in 10 seconds to go 6 times faster than that. So they can literally go like the Flash, or they can just run as fast as Usain Bolt. And so you have all of those levels. But if you go as fast as the Flash, you might only have a couple of seconds. If you go as fast as Usain Bolt, you might have a week of that. And so it's like a trade-off. How long do I want it? But it's the same full amount. Welcome back, Dusty. We're just talking Furukami.
Yeah. And are you there, Dusty?
His symbol's back. I've been listening.
Oh, okay. So what we were just talking about when Marsh uses ferrochemy to save
Sazed.
Sorry. Sazed uses ferrochemy to save Vin, and also the romance relationship between Vin and Elend. So what do you think about those aspects? You still there, Dusty? Maybe his audio cut out there.
Yeah. I think he's just in a bad area for like when he moves around.
No, I had like some error that happened.
Oh, okay. You here?
Are you back?
Yeah, I was muted. That's what happened.
Okay.
Okay. So what did you think of the romance on the Furukami?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
So what did you think of the romance? Oh my goodness, dang it, we just lost him. We cannot win. Sorry, stream people.
Oh, that's too bad.
He'll be back. So Furukami, right?
Yeah.
So how did you feel when that happened, when he did the rescue, when he just zips up?
I thought that was so fucking cool. I'm like, whoa, where did this come from? And he's totally, his power is so cool. And then when they're working together to escape, and then when they work together to kill the Lord Ruler, and we find out like what Kelsier's true plan was. Yeah, that's so cool.
One of the other things is as well, like when Vin burns pewter to become strong, she doesn't physically change, right? It's just magic. Okay. But when Furukamist builds strength, he literally grows muscle. Like his body just goes boom, 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 bulks up. And so why do I bring that up? I just want to say that like Brandon's thought about a lot of stuff, right? He's considered the visual implications even. And so like that, I find that really good, especially if this goes to TV, like if this is a movie. like to be able to see that visual difference between a Feruchemist and an Allomancer.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. Yeah, that would be so cool to see visually depicted when he goes like all Hulk without turning green, basically.
Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And one thing we haven't mentioned about Furukami is the copper mind, which is one of the most important. Um, one of the key things about a copper mind is you can store memories in it. And so, if you think about that from a historian's point of view, that's my degree, by the way. I have my degree is in military history,
Cool.
and that is just so amazing, right? To be able to actually store perfect memories, and if they're stored in copper, they don't degrade. So, like, if you have a cool experience, you can store it in a copper ring, and then you can take that back out and like watch it as if it was happening. Like, things like the day you got married or the day you won the Super Bowl or whatever is a cool experience for you. You can just store that and keep that pristine forever, which is so amazing. And Sazed has stored the histories of religions. He's gone out and found out all religions. And why is this important? Well, one of the key reasons is this. In the Final Empire, the Lord Rulers stomped them all out. He finds religion dangerous. The religion was the root of the original prophecies. So he stamped them out. True or false, he doesn't care. He's just stamped them all out. And so Sazed, one of the things that he's passionate about is preserving these because he believes that religion is an idea, not an individual religion. He doesn't espouse one and say, this is the truth. But he's interested in religion as an idea surviving. Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. And at times, it's like it's a backstory. It's not really to do with the plot, but at times he'll like try and get one of the crew and be like, "Hey, have you thought about this religion?" like,
Mhm.
he's like a missionary, but for every religion, not just for the one he thinks is right. And
Yeah.
I thought that was quite funny. It's like, "Ooh, you're an artist. You might like this arty religion, or
Yeah.
you're pretty hardcore. You might like this hardcore religion." I just thought, wow, that's like
And,
a cool little idea.
And Dusty also reminded me when we were talking about this when I was reading it recently that one of the religions that Sazed mentions ends up becoming like crucially important later on, right?
Absolutely, 100%.
Are you back there, Dusty?
Take yourself off mute. No, I can see his image.
Yeah, he has himself. You have yourself muted there, Dusty. But yeah, that's could you remind me of the details of that religion? Because I don't remember that much.
There's a few different things. So there's in this book, the key thing is that the Teresman religion had a prophecy about the hero of ages, and so they believed it was a specific individual. They revealed that prophecy to him, and then he's like, "Well, if I'm the hero of ages, I'm going to go get the Well of Ascension and do what I'm prophesied to do." But then the person who actually told him that prophecy then like told these other guys, but if he accomplishes it, something's going to go wrong. And so the Terrorismen actually turn on him at the end. And we find this is all spoilers, guys, but we know that by now. Dusty told you about the Lord Ruler's big surprise in like the first sentence. And so they betrayed him and kill him, and then they take the power instead. And Lord Ruler is one of those bodyguards who was with him. And so that's really interesting because that religion then plays into the next several books. But there's also a religion that believed in the green world, right? And so the idea that there was a world before the world of Ash, and Mare believed in that. So that has a crucial aspect in establishing that there was a green world before this one. But the key point for this one is that it helps us realize that the Lord Ruler is a terraceman. And once we realize he's a terraceman, then we can start realizing, hang on, we know he uses allomancy. If he also uses Feruchemy, how will that work? And we know, for example, that Sazed can use gold to store his health. And we know there's one that can store age. But age doesn't help, right? Because if I store a few years to be young, then later on, when I get that back, I'm going to be old because it's a balanced one. So it's no good. But the point is that we realize that by burning gold, as an allomancer, he can fuel his health and thereby remain young and healthy forever by just burning gold, which is plentiful in this world because gold is not the most valuable thing. And I know, we probably don't have time to go into this, but another thing about this book that is just insanely good world building, and not enough people do this, is how he uses atium as the basis of the entire economy.
Yes.
So basically, there's a super rare metal. This metal, if you burn it, is one of the most powerful metals. Basically, if you're burning atium, you can slightly see the future. And so basically, if you're fighting anyone else and they're not burning atium, you win. That's basically the way it's portrayed in this book. If you've got atium and they don't, you just win. Because they do something, you know where they're going to be, you dodge them and you stab them. And when you see their block, you go, I know where you're going to block, so you just go around and kill them. You don't need to be smart, you don't need to be clever. If you've got atium, you win. But atium burns super fast and it is incredibly valuable. So it's like, do you want to blow your $10,000 on winning this fight? Nah, I don't know if I care that much about this fight. I'm going to try winning without using my $10,000 atium bead. And so, but that's so clever to put this huge premium on this incredibly rare resource, but make the incredibly rare resource useful. But if you use it, it doesn't stick around. It's gone. Ooh, really, really clever. Really, really clever.
Yes, definitely. I love that.
It is. And like, who thinks about that, right? How many fantasy series have you read where someone has really, really, really thought about the financial system? And like you mentioned Dune before, the spice must flow, right? And the thing is, the fact that spice allows interstellar travel makes it beyond valuable, but it has to keep going. And because the financial structure of that universe is based on it. And so that's really cool. But most people don't do that. Most books, there's gold, silver, and bronze. Basically, it's money by any other name, and no additional thought given. So I just, great move, Brandon Sanderson. You're probably a good writer. You should probably make some money at this. Oh,
yeah.
Have we got you back, Dusty? This time?
Yeah.
Woo!
I don't know what happened. I think my phone just crashed.
Okay. So did you hear what we were talking about there?
Yeah. I've been listening for the past 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, dude.
So what do you think about like Ferrochemy and Zed and the romance aspects and all that?
Well, I'm not a romance expert. I guess you could say it's probably better than Robert Jordan's very scant. Like, at least we know that it seems like a plausible relationship that would happen.
Yeah, I think so.
Unlike some other authors. But yeah, I think he did it pretty well. It wasn't cringy at all. Like, it seemed completely fine to me. And I didn't have any problems with it.
Yeah.
No, it's like a slow little burn, and it kind of makes sense. Ellen is this completely eccentric and unorthodox kind of nobleman, and it would make sense that he would like look for the same in somebody else. She's really different. She's not like anybody else there. He could tell that she's a bit unrefined and things like that. So it kind of makes like a perfect sense for them to like be together. As far as Ferrochemy and things like that. It was like a big surprise that there was like a second magic system, and it's interesting to see like how powerful it is, but also how limited it is. Because an Alamaster can just pop in anything they need when they can get it, and a Ferrochemist has to sacrifice them some attribute in order to use that attribute in a greater capacity later. But there's some advantages, as was described. But it's an interesting balance that you have this this magic system based off of consumables, and then this magic system based off of sacrifice.
Yeah.
And when it comes to like religion and stuff, I think that it's a super important part of the book, especially when it comes to the resolution of Kelsier's story.
Yeah.
And that like ultimately, without saying so, because we really don't get to actually see him foment this plan, is that his plan eventually is to become a martyr and to create a religion. Because
and he pulls it off.
Yeah, he pulls it off, and I'm guessing Sazed basically taught him on how powerful religions have been. Because we do learn that the Lord Ruler tries to suppress anything that threatens him.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
and then Kelsier does the exact opposite. So he's
Screw you,
trying to use he's trying to use all of these tools, including religion, to usurp the Lord Ruler. And it ends up, like, if we think about what his sacrifice does at the end of this book, ends up being like a major tool in order to unite the Ska. Because we do know that the Ska, there were some other hurdles, like the soothing stations and things like that. But the religion itself that was created after Kelsier's death, it actually held the glue together for them to go ahead and progress into their next state of society.
Yep.
I 100% agree. And one of the things I've never considered, one thing you just said there, Dusty, that I just think that's a great insight, is that obviously Cesar talking about all these religions, and he's like, religion's really useful. I'm going to use me for some of that. That had never occurred to me. I didn't realize, of course, that's a really good idea that's where he got it from. And it makes complete sense. Once again, Brandon didn't like walk me down the road. So again, something new I've just figured out because of what you said there. So I just think that's one of the things I love about these books. You can read them again and again and talk to people about them, and there's more. There's always another secret.
Yeah.
That's the one that he held close that we didn't find out until after he died.
Yeah.
And even then, it wasn't super clear. We just know, he hired this Khandra to impersonate
we haven't
Renew.
even talked about Khandra. We can't. We just go on a massive tangent. But there's shapeshifters in this as well, guys. But again, like with everything else Brandon does, they're a little bit more limited, a little bit more explained than your typical shapeshifter powers. But the thing is, again, he told us all the elements, right? He told us he's got this army. He told us he's going to do this fight. He's told us that there's such a thing as a Khandra. And then bit by bit, he just sets it all up, and then he's like, and then he does his big Brandon avalanche at the end, and it's like, what the? Did not see that coming. Like, I saw the duel coming, right? They're going to face off, Kelsier, Lord Ruler. I saw that coming. But I didn't think the Lord Ruler was going to, like just refuse to die and, kick his trash. I was like, oh. And then, they'll run away now. And he's like, nope, he's straight up dead. I'm like,
I will have to also say that the Lord Ruler's backhand was so powerful that it basically removed half of Kelsier's face.
Yeah.
He slapped half of Kelsier's face off.
Yep.
And he's got 2 spears through him at the time. Like, Kelsier did a good job. He's like, and then the Lord Ruler is like, you annoying person. And just wins. And I'm like, oh, so Brandon isn't afraid to kill people. Okay, then. I mean, he's not George Martin, don't get me wrong, but I was like, that was not, I thought he had plot armor, Kelsier. I really did. And then when that happened, I'm like, so is he not the main character?
Yeah.
Like, oh. So that was I think that was really cool that they did that. And then and I thought that was it, right? I thought that was the big thing. And then when the religion thing happened, and the Khandra comes up and uses Kelsier's bones, it's like, oh my goodness, that's so clever.
Yeah.
And it's so cool. Like they call him the survivor, and you can see a lot of the like the scars on his hands, the scars, and you can see lots of those little elements because Scadrial is the most Earth-like of Brandon's worlds, and you can see a lot of Christian themes in this invented religion. And like I think Brandon is clever, and he manages to do it in a way that is not offensive. But he does clearly show how these things can grow, and certain aspects can make people believe certain things.
So are you
And like
saying that Kelsier is Jesus?
I'm saying, I'm saying that Kelsier is clearly got some aspects of a Jesus Christ analog, absolutely. And now I'm personally a very devout Christian, okay, and I don't use the name of Christ in vain. But the point is that that symbol is a very powerful one. And one of the things that's really good about Brandon is that even though Brandon has his own opinions about things, he believes the duty of an author is not to give the answers or to say this is the way you should feel, but to ask questions and then you decide how you feel about it. And so the thing I love about this book is you could be someone who's maybe quite atheistic and sees a lot of problem with religion and the problems that religion has caused in the world, and you can look at that and go, you see, this is how religions get out of hand. Someone crafty does something and then people believe it and then it just grows out of all proportion. But if you choose to, the book is written in such a way that you can look at it and go, and this is the good that religion can do. And there is a possibility of a true religion. And that isn't discounted either, but nor is it proved. He doesn't say, this is the way. What he says is, here's some interesting questions and some real life for you. Take from this what you want to take. And I think that's very hard to get right. And I think he did get it right because someone like me was able to watch that and see, the scars on his hands, very similar to Christ-like attributes, spearing spears through the Lord Ruler, yet he is immortal, very Jesus Christ-like, dies and then rises from the dead, apparently, and then speaks to his followers who then rise up because they saw him alive and they know him, and not take offense and not see that as someone saying, your religion's bunker, mate, because that isn't how it comes across. But it does show and build on that. We can see that and see the power of that and the unity that something like Christianity has brought for some people in this world. Like some of the most amazing things that have ever happened, like the building of major cathedrals that took thousands of people to do and multiple decades to build. Like, why would anyone dedicate their lives to this? It just shows the power of religion, true or false. And I love the fact that Brandon doesn't feel the need to say, you must believe this because I'm telling you as the author, that's the truth. He just says, no, that's what happens on my world. And now it's over to you. And but yeah, I just think it's an interesting analog.
Yeah, for sure, man. I didn't even realize as many of those parallels until you mentioned them. Yeah.
Oh, and when you get into the next series and you have the Survivorist Church, they're all over like Christian things. And they have like the spear upon which he was killed, and like it's like the cross and all of this jazz. Anyway, that's by the by. But I'm just saying this guy, this writer that we're talking about, he is dang good at what he does. He isn't just good at one thing. His world building has been carefully thought through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's good at everything. Like the magic system, the combat sequences, the plot with the twists and turns, the character development, the world building, as you mentioned, and like the romance.
Dimension. I don't mind different dimensions. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's all good, man.
So, favorite moments maybe in the book?
Oh man, I don't.
Justine, what about you? Favorite moments?
Kelsier versus the Steel Inquisitor.
All right. What do you like about it?
I liked that we built up a specialty for each of the mistings, and then we finally get to see what Kelsier's real specialty is, which is his mastery of pushing and pulling. Mm. And It's just because we got to remember that scene ended up um, getting him killed, right? Or is that a different
Yeah,
part?
I mean, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because it's a pretty big pivotal scene. So you have this battle. Well, first, the reason why this battle started is because Renew and Spook were in the execution train about to be executed, and this is the second execution that they were going to witness. And Kelsier was not going to get involved at all. He was just telling everyone, "Yeah, everyone, we have to watch this execution happen." As soon as he sees Renew and Spook, he's like, you know what, I got to do something here. So he gets involved.
These are his personal people, aren't they? Like, you said before, Dusty, that even though he's cold, his loyalty to the crew is a real thing. It's a real thing, a real vibrant love or care.
Yep.
Yeah, so we see the great sacrifice and this one we get to see like the ultimate power of Kelsier in his prime, which is he can finally defeat a Inquisitor. Like we see that it's possible. But then he immediately goes up the next level and tries to take on the Lord Ruler.
Yeah.
And he easily is defeated. So we see, okay, and then that was like a really huge pivot point in the book. Like, all right, he's going to take on the Lord Ruler. And then after we see the most powerful character that we've seen in this book get completely slapped down by the Lord Ruler, you kind of lose hope. It's like, what are they going to do now? It's like, look what happened to Kelsier. Like, how in the hell are they going to beat them? And like their second most powerful person is Vin, and she's nowhere near as
She's just
experienced as Kelsier is.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's
so
what the Final Empire is all about, isn't it? Hopelessness.
No, I was going to say, like, it's sort of like, I know this happens all the time where we get a setup of impossible odds, but I really felt it at that point because you lost a main character, and now it seems like there's no way in hell that they're going to get past this. But they do in an interesting way, but we were like, damn, what the hell's going to happen now? Like,
it would be like if Morpheus died towards the end of the Matrix, and they're like, "Fuck, how are we going to do this without Morpheus?"
Yeah, and like I really like what you said there, because the Final Empire is all about hopelessness, isn't it? Like he's deliberately stamped out anything that might give people the desire to rebel. Like he's like taken away their religion. He's got rid of the terrorists. And if people did rebel, he sends Kolos, which we don't actually see, but we know that basically this thing called Kolos, if the Lord Ruler sends it, everyone dies. We're not quite sure what it is, but we know it kills everything.
And when we see them, they're pretty fucking badass.
They are. But like that hopelessness that you just described there, Dusty, that's why people don't rebel against him anymore. Because they've tried. They've burned down a house with him inside it, and he just walked out and was like, "Hey, I've got no skin left, but I'll have some in a minute." It's like, and so when we see these spears get shoved right through him, and then just not even removing the spears, he just keeps living. You're like, yeah, there's no way to beat this guy. He's beyond us all. He is a god that he claims to be.
Yep. She has to figure out a way to beat him by outsmarting him and using his powers against him, basically, right?
Yeah. But the thing is, what they use.
She uses psychology on him.
Yeah.
And the history that they learned. Because if they hadn't got the journal and hadn't figured out that he was one of the packmen, hadn't figured out that he was a terroristman, that is what helps them realize he must have some braces on him.
Yeah.
And that is, of course,
an important aspect of the plot too. When we find out that the journal was not actually kept by who they thought it was one of the packmen, as you said.
Yeah, the Elendi, who is the original, thought he was the hero of ages, is actually the pack when he talks about in his journal and says, "Oh, they're a bit suspicious of me." Yeah, one of them's the actual Lord Ruler, and we thought the journal was the Lord Ruler's journal. It wasn't. It was the guy he replaced, and that's what I mean. It's like secret within a secret. So he's the guy he replaced, but then we find out he didn't just replace him, but then he took up the power, and then what he did with that, and we don't really know at this point what he did with that, but we know he did summit. Yeah. And only then can we start realizing things like he set up allomancy. So he's got both. Oh, and then all this impossible stuff that he's been able to do. We're like, was Brandon just saying he could do that? No, Brandon actually thought that through and has a mechanical way within the system that works. And that was because like at one point we thought that the 11th medal was going to save the day, right? Because Kelsier, even though I don't know if he really believed the 11th medal was going to save the day, he like says to them, "I've got an extra medal," and they're all like, "You can't have an 11th medal. There is no 11th medal." He's like, "Oh, I do." But then the 11th medal is Electrum, and so just like gold shows your future, but kind of, but Electrum shows the past, or like who you were. And so by using that, the past and the future, they get to see the Lord Ruler as a packman. They get to see that. And so that helps, even though it's a useless power, which it is, supposedly, kind of a useless power, it actually reveals a crucial piece of knowledge that they can use to defeat the undefeatable. And he's good at that. He's really good at that. If you've read The Arithmetist, he uses a boy who doesn't know the magic to win a game at the magic. And you're like, what? How did you do that, Brandon? So, very, very clever, very, very cool. But one of the big criticisms I've heard of this book, and Dusty's touched on it, is at the ending, Vin beats him by doing something that is unexplained. And I think if Brandon rewrote the book now, I don't think he would do it quite that way. Because she pulls on the mists. And we know later on, if you read all the rest of his series, why that works and why that makes sense in the rules. But when she does it, it does look like a Deus Ex Machina. And I do know there are several people on message boards or people who gave the Final Empire lower reviews than I often feel it deserved. And they often cite this as one of the reasons.
Oh, okay.
They he put himself in a corner and then just solved it by she pulls on mysterious power and wins.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I kind of like it. I kind of like that aspect because, like I was mentioning earlier, the like some of the rules that we think there are based on characters' false beliefs. So it's like she's discovering new information about the world, and we do find that out later. So it's all about whether you prefer like just having that aspect like that at the end of this book for it to be elaborated on further in the later books, or you prefer it being like fully explained now. And like I mean, obviously we're probably all biased because we've read the whole trilogy and we know that it gets more fully explained, but I kind of prefer the way that he did it in terms of that.
Cool. Dusty, what are your thoughts on that final conclusion?
Well, at first, I was kind of confused, and I had that same problem, but if you proceed and actually read the rest of the material, it's fine. It's just, it depends on the person whether that investment is not something taken lightly or not. For me, it's not. Some people, it may be a little bit of a harder sell to have them invest themselves quite further just to find out why that ending of the first book makes sense.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I don't really have a problem with it after I got through everything, but it takes you getting to the end of the story to actually find out what really happened when it comes to the end of the first book, and just some other aspects. But even then, it's also exciting that those got paid off much later, because it somewhat kept me hooked into the story because there's some things that I'm expecting to get explained later that I really want to know about. I think the balance is fine. Some people don't like their payoffs all the way in the last book. Then I guess they couldn't read The Wheel of Time, because that's how that works. But I thought it was fine. I know the criticism is there, but I think that's just the problem, though. It's that it was at the end of the book. If there was some
Correct.
unexplained thing that happened, maybe like towards the middle, then it would have been way more acceptable. But because it ended like that, it's kind of a little bit questionable.
Yeah, and the thing is, right? Like we're fans, okay? In my own case, I would consider myself an absolute fanatical fan of Brandon Sanderson. I don't think the guy's done anything I don't like, so I'm not a good critic, okay? Because I'm incredibly biased. I just absolutely adore everything this guy writes. He writes the kind of book I want to read, but I think if it is very okay, and Brandon himself takes criticism extremely well.
He
And
does.
one of the things he will often do on his live streams, etc., is he will point out things he did in his earlier books and use that as an example of things he'd like to do better in future writing. And I think that's quite humble of him, but I don't think it's disingenuous. I think he genuinely thinks that. And what I've heard him say, I think if I was going to do this as the answer to the main plot arc, I would have at least put something in that there is a way to tap into the mists. And it's not fully understood, and Vin can do it. And like have that established, but not explained fully. But he's like, if I was going to do it again, I would pun some things like where at another point in the book she draws on the mists by accident and does something like an extra strong push or something. And I thought, so he's thinking already. He's like, she needed to pull on the mists to make it work, but he's like, because of the idea of promise and payoff within a book, he's like, that's something I would do if I was going to do it again in the future. And that's cool to be able to say, yeah, I can see something, and I think, I'd like to slightly grow as an author. One of the other criticisms that I often hear leveled at this book and at Brandon sometimes in general, but I hear this leveled at a lot of authors, is not good enough female characters, right? And I hear that said at Robert Jordan all the time, right? Like his female characters or whatever. And I would disagree. But one of the things that Brandon himself has said is he's like, I'm going to nail the female character, right? Because I'm going to do a great character called Vin, who's not going to be one note, who's going to be multifaceted, and I'm going to research it, and I'm going to do this great character. And he did. And then he's like, but then I looked at the entire rest of the crew, and they're all men. And I'm like, dang it, I did a token female. But she isn't a token female because she's the protagonist. But the other female characters are just not in it very much. Mare is barely present. And the only really defined female character in it other than Mare is Shanna Lariel, who is, of course, a little witch. She's like Queen Bee Nasty Biatch, trying to kill off her boyfriend because he wouldn't be her boyfriend. Oh, wow. She is like bad news. By the way, I did not expect Shanna Lariel to be a Mistborn, like badass ninja woman as well. Like that surprised me. I thought she was just nasty biatch queen. I did not expect her to be stood on a roof and be like, by the way, I'm a Mistborn. And have like I was like, when I read that, I was like, actually my mouth came open a little bit. I was like, what? I thought like they'd fight other people. I did not think they'd fight the prissy prom queen woman. I was like shocked out of my mind. But I'm very happy to see her killed.
There's one.
There was a
Yeah, there was one little problem I had with that fight scene. Is that the fight scene? It started with two Mistborn, and one of them got like easily taken out by colliding with some guard that she had sent flying through the air. I was like, really? That quick?
I think he's a Misting.
Well, they were two Mistborn, I thought.
Well, you might be right, Justy. It's been a while, but yeah, you're thinking if he's a Mistborn, right? You've established that Mistborns are badass. They shouldn't just be like,
because there were two. Yeah, because she said that they were both wearing mist cloaks.
So I think there are coin
Because it
shops who
was
wear the
Channel Ariel. Yeah, it was Channel
Ariel is
Ariel and then
definitely.
another person with another Mistborn with her. And she
All right,
had some mistings there also.
as
So
well.
I was like,
Okay.
really? I was like, really? They just take out the one Mistborn guy like that quickly? That's crazy.
Yeah, that shouldn't be so easy. Um,
That's a good
my
point.
my I absolutely love Chanel Ariel dying. I quite enjoyed that because I find her an absolute punk. But I think even though I love this book and I love a lot about it and the ending is amazing, I think the biggest reveal for me was not actually the fight. It was the Kelsier's plan, the deep religion plan.
Oh yeah,
Didn't see it coming. Didn't see Kelsier's death coming. Found that really shocking and really surprising. Really well executed. I found that
yeah,
better than any of the action scenes. I really did. But I think my favorite moment is like when the crew all come together for the first time and they're like all walking in the room and they're like introducing themselves and you've got Clubs, the old seasoned veteran, and you've got Spook, the young wide-eyed guy who's going to try and flirt with the new girl because she's the only girl in like anywhere around that he can possibly flirt with, so he tries and does terribly. And like Ham, who has a family, and I just think that was like such a cool little thing. I know we don't really get to meet them, but just Ham's like, yeah, I'm a married guy. I've got to make sure that my wife's okay, my kids, and goes back home every night. I'm like, oh, like, so you're not just here to fulfill the plot. You have a life, and like Breeze and Ham with their stupid like philosophical debates. I'm just like, I love that. I love that, like the crew assembling business. And I think it might have been my favorite scene, even
yeah,
though it's not like a cool fight scene. It's not a cool magic scene. And like when Kelsey's just like he gets on a board or something, he just like writes the destruction of the final empire. Like he just puts it up on the board. He's like, that's our objective. Not to
mhm,
do a good job. That's our objective. How do we achieve that? And I'm like, oh, that just got real.
yeah,
And I was amazing because so often when we talk about goals, we do mediocre goals, right? That we can be pretty comfortable we'll hit. I'm going to lose 2 pounds this month. And like, we rarely put down goals like find the love of my life,
yeah.
or,
Run
like,
an ultra marathon.
yeah, change the world. But there are people who do, and I find that those people are the people who have changed the world. There are people like Martin Luther King, right? I have a dream, and then now we're living in a world where that dream has begun to be realized, and it's amazing. And I
Well
think
said.
Kelsey is one of those people who's like, I think big, and there's a moment when, like, this is a really minor thing, and I only mention it because on Shardcast, on 17th Shard, there's a guy who's on the podcast. And when they do the guessing game where they try and figure out which cosmic character to talk about, he often guesses Menace. And Menace is the Scar leader from the very first scene when Kelsier comes in and trashes the noble place. And Menace eventually goes and is part of the army, and then when the army go off to try and fight and get slaughtered, some of them don't go. And it's Menace, the old man, who kept some of them back and persuaded them to run away. And so when Kelsier meets him, their army's toast, their plan's been revealed, nothing's working out, they're done, they've got nothing, they've lost Marsh, everything's gone to the crapper. And he says to Kelsier, you know what? Don't feel bad. You've done more than any of us have ever done. We got closer this time than we've ever got. And Kelsey's like, you're telling me congratulations that everyone's dead and that we've
Yeah,
utterly failed. It's like, yes, but you utterly failed a bit closer than last time. And he's like, Kelsier finds that unacceptable.
yeah,
Unacceptable. And that's why he put his thing on the fall of the final empire. And I just think that is one of the things about Kelsier that is amazing, that he was crazy enough to truly believe in success against the impossible. Uh,
yeah. Well
yeah,
said. Yeah.
yeah.
For
So
me,
that's why I love that scene. What about you, Andrew?
For
Favorite
me
part?
personally, because like I'm an inner teenager at heart, my favorite parts were all the combat sequences. Like I guess specifically when Kelsier engages in that heist himself, when
Oh, yes.
when he's fighting the Inquisitor, when he's fighting the Lord Ruler, and when Sazed rescues Vin, and when
Yeah.
Vin and Sazed kill the Lord Ruler.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And you actually, that first heist, didn't even talk about it, when he goes to steal the Adium. That is a cool, cool, cool scene. Like
Yeah,
when we see him for the first time really be Mistborn, and they send in all the haze killers who have no metal on them, and he's just like, yeah, watch me kill all of you.
yeah, yeah.
By
It's
the way,
so
just what's your favorite bit of world building of
favorite
Scadrial?
aspect of the world building. I mean, if I'm looking at the whole trilogy, I would say like the aspects of the myths and the gods
Okay.
that we don't know about yet. But if I had to go just off of the first book, I would say the hard magic system and how
Okay.
intricate it is, and like you said, how there are limits on it too.
And what about you, Dusty? What's your favorite part of the world building that he's done?
Well, I like that there's like these allusions to like a better looking world. I
Yeah.
know um, Kelsier is always going on about green planet, and then Vin's like, "Oh, that sounds ridiculous. Like that just doesn't sound right. Green plants and colorful flowers. What's wrong with you?" But yeah, the whole oppressive nature. We're talking about like the ash falls and like the mists at night and just how oppressive the environment seems. Like I know one of the deals was like everyone's just all ashy and grimy and dirty, and
All the
then like
time.
we have these noblemen who have the resources to keep themselves clean. So that even creates a greater stratification of society. But I do like because I know it has to be because it's a little strange because I know for sure someone had a timepiece.
Oh yeah.
So we know they have some
It has
sort of
some tech.
clockwork,
Yeah.
but yeah, they don't have a bunch of like super technological things. And you know, I guess Sanderson's not the best at kind of describing like more intricate details, like the type of clothing they're wearing. Like it's like, oh, nobleman's jacket. It's like, okay, what is that supposed to mean? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
what exactly is a nobleman's jacket?
He's not
Like,
Robert
is that
Jordan, is
like?
he?
it won't take like a page and a half describing the dress.
Yeah. Robert
Yeah, so I
Jordan,
guess it's you
Mr.
kind of you kind of have to imagine like what type of era we're working with here. There's a lot of pictures and like imaginations that people have. You see a nobleman's jacket, like all of like Kelsier's crew are like dressed in like 1800s attire
Yep.
with like stuff that rich people would wear in the 1800s. So I guess it's kind of thrown in the air. Like he's not as an in-depth world builder as some others, but I thought it was sufficient for the story. That was for sure. And I
One
do
of the
like the names that he comes up with like
oh,
various things in his world,
yeah.
like Creedic Shaw and
I
the
was
kind of
just gonna
description
say
of that
Critic
place.
Shaw. Yes. I'm just gonna say Critic Shaw. Correct, great stuff. What I wanted to say, like, because I disagree slightly. I think he's as deep or even deeper than almost anyone else I've read, but he does it in a different way. Like, I mean, Robert Jordan, he's pretty freaking deep, and like, Tolkien, what language do your trees speak? You know, like the guy's deep, but I think Brandon's deep, but maybe in a different way. So he doesn't describe a single thing in intricate detail, but what he does is he hints at so many things that so few people properly consider. Like I'm sure that Tolkien gave great thought to the finances of his system, but we never hear about it. Okay, they talk about the hobbits paying for things. We never see that money. We have no idea what that money's based off. And what is it based off anyway? Does Sauron have a pound? Do the orcs use money? How do they finance things? Never described, never explained. In Mistborn, we have boxings, which I think is a cool slang term for their money. Who comes up with a different slang term other than cash and dosh and dollars and bucks? But we do that all the time with our own money, right? Like in England, we call pounds, we would say a quid. Have you got 10 quid? We mean 10 pound. In America, you might say 10 bucks. You mean $10. So that's really realistic that they've been called boxings because they have the castle. It's a square castle. So like, oh, it's a box. And like, how cool is that? That he thought of that. And that the financial system is based on atium, which is so clever and so intricate and so interesting as a financial basis and how that works. And then that's important in future books as well. I'm like, bravo, Mr. Sanderson. Love that world building aspect. Another world building aspect that I really like is his language. Like I said, he plays with the French language in this, but he also does more than that. So, for example, there's the street slang that Spook speaks, the wazzing of wadding and wishing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And like, that is not a big deal, right? That's just showing that there's a slang, but that's really realistic. If you go and try and talk to gang kids in London, they're using all sorts of different words for they can speak English fine, but they have their own slang, their own cant, if you will, of how they talk to each other. And if you try and talk it to them, they'll just be like, what are you even trying to do? But I think that's really clever. The language thing, I think, is really, really cool, really, really intricate. And then lastly, just one last thing I want to throw out there is the way that if you're in a world where some people can just mess with metal, the way that metal is used is suddenly far more important. And like they've developed an entire military profession that literally wear no metal. That is their entire point, because it means they can take out allomancers. Yeah. And like when the Inquisitors attack, they're attacking with axes, but their axes are obsidian or glass daggers. Like that is a really cool little touch. That, and like sometimes when people are doing art and they draw art of Vin and she has a metal dagger in their hands, you can just see the geeks like me. I don't comment badly though, but some of the geeks will, and they'll be like, "What? You call yourself a fan? That Mistborn's holding a metal dagger. What are you thinking?" And he's like, look, they're just doing a nice piece of art. Back off. But
well, Vin does. There are depictions of Vin carrying a Koloss sword.
That's true.
That's and Koloss swords can be pushed on, and obviously in later books there is a couple of scenes where she freaking uses a Koloss sword, but also at that point, Vin is beyond insane power level, and just like we should talk about one of the other books at some point in life. But like, there's a moment where Vin does like a jump, just one single jump, like she's like an Exocet missile. She's small 5-foot woman arriving with a sword that's as big as she is. Boom! And you're just like, oh my goodness, you're a small piece of destruction.
Yep.
But that's Vin for you. And that's why I love that little dynamite piece of destruction. But so yeah, I think that should be mentioned, that the fact that he like messed around with metal and made metal such an intrinsic part of the world. The money thing I think is really cool, and the languages thing I think is really cool. So even though there's an imperial standard, he puts slang in. Like even the slang names for the metal users, right? If there were those metal users, we'd come up with slang names for them, and they did. And like calling people a tin eye if they're good at seeing things, or saying someone is got a zinc tongue if they're good at smooth talking, because zincs are rioters. I just think I love that. I love me a bit of that, and like even his swearing is that way. You know,
Lord Ruler. Lord Ruler.
Yeah, sorry, Lord Ruler. Instead of like in this world, we hear people using the name of Jesus Christ for that, for example, or God. Yeah. And so it really establishes that even the people who don't worship Lord Ruler, they swear with him because they're used to that. and he does that in a lot of his books. But I think
like
Robert Jordan,
Stormfather.
right? Blood and Bloody Ashes, right? From
Stormfather.
Storm Off.
Yeah.
Yeah, all of that. So I'm just saying, I think that's really good world building. That may not be like what are the colors of the buttons and the pleats of the gowns and
Hey, is rusting one of the
rusting
curses?
because of the metal. That's right.
Yeah.
That is the one on schedule. Is rusting this and rusting that, and it's just freaking cool. It's freaking cool. I love it, and I just think, and like we haven't even got into things like mist wraiths, Kandra,
Oh yeah.
Koloss, all of that. So if we do future books, we can talk about that when a lot more of that stuff is revealed. But the fact is, even in this book, he's given us so much, but he's hinted at so much more. And so I think he's a master world builder. I think he's a master world builder for that reason.
Yeah, for sure, man. Definitely. Well said.
Yeah, and I think, when Sazed talks, they have a certain speech pattern.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we see in that he's not the only one that has that speech pattern in the later books.
Yep.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I didn't even notice all of those details until you guys mentioned them there. I noticed a few of them, but not all of them. Yeah, that's really, like you said, that's like such an intricately built world. It's so great.
And at no point does he sit us down and go, yeah, this is the way the cheap people speak.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he doesn't need to. Spook just speaks that way, and they treat him in a certain way. So you realize, oh, so that's the street slang. Yeah, and I love that. He doesn't sit down and go, by the way, this is the way the ATM economy works. It's just established, and I just think, show don't tell, show don't tell.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah,
he's so good.
Oh, do you know that Brandon is writing a screenplay for Mistborn?
I heard that. Yeah, that's
so basically he's put it around and it's been optioned many times, but it's never got anywhere. And one of the things I just want to throw out there that's an interesting point is he's using this as a way to reinvent it. Like he isn't like saying it has to be exactly like it is in the book, which you'd think as the author he'd be like, whoa, it's got to be like exactly what I wrote. And one of the things he's going to do is he's changing up some of the genders of the characters so that he can have more key female characters. So if it was a film, it would be more balanced in the casting. So, for example,
what do make Breeze a female or something?
No, Ham. He wants to make Ham a female.
Ham as a female?
Because he thinks that would play much better. Because with pewter, right, it doesn't matter if you're male or female. Yeah, because the physical strength that you have is irrelevant compared to the way you burn pewter. And you can see that in a film how that would come across. You can have some slick female actress play it, but have her be super strong, which lots of people will very much enjoy watching as she flings people around the set.
That totally changes things, though, because if I remember right, like there was an interesting advantage that Vin had as a smaller person on pewter that Ham couldn't really deal with as well because of her size and stature and him being larger.
But they'll play that off.
We'll see how that happens.
Because I imagine it'll be a very different relationship. And that's one of the things. I think he's going to do another one of the crew as a female as well. And the key point, I believe, is exactly to balance that. But he said it will change their interaction with her. The fact that they're female will change the interaction that they have with Vin. And I think that's great, seeing it as a new way of looking at the same story.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if a female Marsh would work because of the conflict of love interest between...
But hey, he could. And, in this day and age, they could just have Marsh. They could just have Marsh be a lesbian. Now, I know that might not be perfect for Brandon. But seriously, that would sell well on a film. It would. There's because it just giving that idea of actually there's scope for everything, and having a love triangle where two of them are girls and the girl is still the middle point could be for some people a very interesting and attractive option.
Like
What about
be
the lesbian
bisexual and
spook?
have a love triangle with Marsh and Elland.
Yeah. You know what though? Actually,
Lesbian
that's
spook.
Dusty. I think that's a really good shout. I think lesbian spook could really work.
I think it would actually work the best, to be honest.
Yeah. But anyway, the thing is, right? Like I myself am a very old-fashioned straight guy from a very boring way of looking at life. Like I'm very much down the path of, marriage in the old school style and everything. But we're in a world here where we need to be as balanced and as inclusive as we can. And in any modern media, I think we're gonna need to see people demonstrating to all parts of society, hey, you're welcome in our fandom. Yeah, you're welcome in this story. We want you to feel an attachment to it. And so I think we'll see a lot more of that kind of thing in
So is there going
adaptation.
to be a trans Breeze then?
You know what? To be honest, I
'Cause
hope not.
I think Breeze is the most feminine of the male
Yeah,
characters.
Yeah,
but I think that's why he wouldn't. I think that's why he's thinking of Ham instead of Breeze, because to make the person who's like manipulating people's emotions the woman, and the strong person the man, is I think plays to trope. Whereas I think he likes the idea of playing against the tropes. And that, because I agree with you, Breeze emphasizes a lot of qualities that we would consider female qualities, and Ham emphasizes a lot of qualities we would consider male qualities. But that's part of what these authors want to attack, is that is there a female quality and a male quality, or have we just decided that those things are that way because of our culture? And personally, I think
Let's make clubs a woman.
yeah, but I don't think he's going too far. He's just saying, I think I'm going to do two, but that's all you need to make it feel far more fleshed out and to be able to explore different kinds of relationships, which I think will be very very beneficial. But I think the two I heard are Doxson and Ham in the first draft anyway, that he's going for. But we'll see. And I really hope it gets made because, like, those scenes that you said you loved, Andrew, like those like really combative scenes. I think they would just look good on film. I really do.
Yeah.
And I think as long as it's like got a reasonable budget, I don't think it needs Avatar levels of budget to be a really good film. Because we don't need huge prosthetics or anything. There doesn't need to be extreme CGI. And a lot of what is done with the magic system can be done with wire work and stuff like that. So you can still be pretty grounded and real. You can use realistic buildings, and I just think it would be cool. I hope I live to see Brandon's stuff go, Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I'd like if they did like a multimedia thing, like he went and tried to do graphic novels, possibly pitch it to like an animation studio,
absolutely,
maybe a video game, a movie series.
And like with the Lord of the Rings movies and the Game of Thrones show, they really opened up the possibilities for much more funding for fantasy projects, right? Like how there's a Wheel of Time and a Lord of the Rings series being made right now, right?
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I just want that to be good so badly. Oh, I want that to be good so badly because Wheel of Time is like my kind of fantasy, right? And I never believed that my kind of fantasy would get the proper like films and TV shows. I never really believed it would happen in the 90s because like fantasy was for like weird people like me, and it didn't have the mass appeal to make the money. And Lord of the Rings just broke that open. It really did. The Lord of the Rings movies were crucial for what they did for the genre. And when they recognized, especially Return of the King at the Oscars, and just gave it Best Picture, and one of the things that the director said as he spoke, he said, "Thank you for recognizing fantasy, not just my film, but fantasy. You finally admitted that a fantasy film can be a freaking good film.
Yes.
And then Game of Thrones was just so unbelievably popular. And it proved you can have fantasy aspects. And there's people who are not geeks who want to watch this stuff as long as it's done well, as long as it's good.
Yeah.
I'm so excited about this Wheel of Time
you
show,
also have
guys.
to point like to Harry Potter, even though it's
Huge
not
point.
super
Harry Potter's
adult in
That's true.
nature.
Yeah. I grew
I
up
agree.
reading those books as they were coming out.
Those books were amazing. Those films are good, and actually, those films are pretty good adaptations. And the actors have done good jobs with the characters they were given. You're right, Dusty. Harry Potter is revolutionized. Many people only heard of fantasy because of that, and then went on to read much, much more because of Harry Potter. So that's massive. I know a lot of people who don't read at all, and they've read those books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like it, like with Game of Thrones in particular too. Like I think one of the reasons it attracted such a massive audience is that it's like House of Cards in the fantasy world.
It is, and he didn't pull any punches. And like some of the people who have problems with fantasy say it's too full of tropes. You know, and we've seen it before. The Farm Boys.
The funny thing. Yeah, the funny thing, in order to get my wife to watch Game of Thrones, I just told her it's like a medieval soap opera, and she totally bought into it, and it's one of her favorite shows. I know the ending isn't great for some of us who are more...
Don't tell me, because just to be clear, I didn't actually watch it, most of it, because...
I'm not going to tell anyone. I just say, like, the ending
so I
is
know
disappointing.
It's an old show, but I want to read the books. And so I'm sure that the ending will have some at least relation to the ending of the books. And I really, really want to read the books for what they are, because I've very much enjoyed them. A bit too much nudity in that show for me to watch, sadly, because I have my own personal idea of where my lines are. But I heard that the show was amazing, and the clips I've seen from it are fantastic. The acting seems to be on point. The costumes seem to be sensational. And the combat scenes that I've seen clips of are like brutal, but like straight up. And the fact that they got things like the Red Wedding right, I mean, that's just amazing. That must be one of the episodes that will fix in people's minds, because people did not see that coming. In the books,
it's funny. It's super hilarious too, because when I already knew all this stuff was going to happen because I had read the books, and I'm watching the show with my wife, and I was like anticipating like her reaction to that episode.
Yeah, it's like when you get when your wife and you start watching the Wheel of Time series, Dusty, and you're getting into Lord of Kesh, you're like, oh, Demai Wells, it's coming up, and then you're like, come on, and then there's an episode, it's like Demai Wells, and you're like, this is the episode. And there's like Ashaman kill, and your wife's like, no, they didn't, and you're like, yeah, I knew this was coming. It's such, and that's cool, isn't it? When you can know it's coming and it's still amazing. And George Martin is just a different kind of author, and Robert Jordan's a different kind of author, and Brandon Sanderson is a different kind of author. And I just love the fact that I enjoy all of them. I think they're fantastic. I love the fact that they all exist right now. I want to read all their stuff, and like, you know, like Butcher, right? Totally different, you know, with the Dresden Files. But that's the thing. Because you like one style doesn't mean you need to knock on anyone else's.
Yeah.
Brandon said that they came to him and they were like, can you be like George R. R. Martin, but like shorter? He's like, he tried, and he's like, I suck at it. I tried writing Grimdark. I can't do it well. George R. R. Martin really can. Joe Abercrombie is a god of Grimdark.
Yes.
Well, I know for sure, and I've actually heard Sanderson say this, is that he said specifically that he doesn't like the Song of Ice and Fire. Like, he's actually said that.
Yeah, you said that. That's like blasphemy to me.
Well, he also says that he recognizes it's a good series, that it's well written, but it is not to his taste. And he does not like graphic nudity, even if it has a purpose in the text. He also doesn't like extreme described gory violence. He doesn't, and that's
He
okay.
doesn't like Joe Abercrombie.
Yeah, I don't think Brandon likes Joe Abercrombie's books either to read them. But what he does acknowledge is they are masterful authors. He doesn't want to write them a cover quote because he does not genuinely like that kind of book. And one of the things I love that Brandon said, he said, whenever I give a review, if I give a review, it is a positive one. If I have a negative view, I'll keep it to myself.
That's a good policy.
But especially when you're someone like him who's a big influencer. Like if Brandon comes out and says this guy has done a terrible job, that's going to have a weight and could maybe damage that author if they're a small author, especially. And so I think Brandon, I mean, even if people don't like him as an author, I haven't met anyone who's like, this guy's a douche as a person.
Oh, yeah.
Even people who don't like him as an author are like, this is a nice
Very
guy.
good kind.
Yeah. He's
genuine. Very good kind.
Very good kind of special individual. But Brandon doesn't hate on him. Daniel Green, on the other hand, would have comments. But, and by the way, just so you know, I own and have read the entire Sword of Truth series. Oh, so I know very good kind of stuff. But I
think I read like the first 3 books or so.
I don't recommend people to read that. No, the reason is that there's good parts of those books, and there's parts of them that are clever, that are good reveals, and have some good character moments in. But the point is, it's not that he's terrible. He's fine as an author, but there are so many people who are so much better. And one thing that Terry Goodkind does do is he preaches. He preaches hard. And his political leanings come over very strongly in his books. And some of that I find hard to read. And also he has one other problem I really don't like, which is his protagonist is just flawless. He is great at sex. He's great at magic. He's great at fighting. He's great at leadership. He doesn't have mental health issues. You know, he's just ideal. No wonder all the women like him. And no wonder he gets the best and most hottest one who can't have sex with anyone else but can with him because of love. Yeah. It's all, and I find that hard to swallow.
And he has like in book 2 and 3, he has all these other women chasing after him all the time.
But I'm not surprised, right? Because if there was a super rich, super handsome, super nice, super powerful guy who was also very humble and down to earth, you would be into him. Heck, I might no. The thing is that I don't like a hero like that. I find them a bit stale. But there's some things in his way of speaking and his way of putting things across that I do find hard. And like in one of the series, there is a pacifist group, and he's straight up ready to kill them if they're not prepared to fight for what they believe in. He's like, you either fight or you or I eliminate you, basically. And I understand what he's saying. He's saying that in a time of war, it's kill or be killed, maybe. But they're prepared to potentially let themselves die for their beliefs, and just that the author, I feel, makes a comment that basically pacifism in this space is just evil, and I don't agree. I think I'm not a pacifist myself, but I think it was a statement that I found jarring, and I didn't find in line with the character that I believe had been set up. So yeah, I can understand why people find Terry Goodkind hard work, and Terry Goodkind as a person does make comments and criticizes people very openly, and that I find hard to take as well from someone in that position. I think they've got to be careful with what they say, because it gives an impression of who they are. That might be false. I also think we're terrible for taking one comment and like blowing it out of proportion in this world. Like if someone says anything, it's like, this guy is this, you know? And I'm like, well, I don't think it's quite that cut and dried. I'm a big enemy of cancel culture.
Yeah, me too.
I don't like it.
Like I personally think that like if Terry Goodkind is like it seems like he's kind of an asshole, that doesn't necessarily that like to me that doesn't at all mean that you shouldn't read his books, but it's like the like separately from that his books are not like for me personally because Dusty got me into a lot more fantasy in the past few years or so. I've experienced so much better fantasy that I look back on that now and I appreciate it less than I did at first. Like I think it was because it was before I read Wheel of Time or any of those other series that you mentioned, which it reminds me also I was just thinking about how I totally agree with what you said, like all of those different series you mentioned, like Mistborn,
Abercrombie, and
Mistborn, Joe Abercrombie, The Blade, First Law, A Song of Ice and Fire, and Dresden Files. They're all different types of fantasy stories, and they all have their appeals for different reasons to me too. Kind of like what you're saying there.
I agree with you completely, Andrew. And but that's no need to rag on anyone. And also, and even Mr. Goodkind, right? Even though he's dead now. But even if he has made comments that I disagree with, that doesn't mean he's like an a-hole, right? It means that he has some views I disagree with, and he maybe has many views that are lovely, and he is probably very good to those that know him and very kind and very loyal. And just sometimes we can jump to conclusions when we hear a few comments that we dislike. And like the J.K. Rowling fiasco is part of that. You know, there's many things about that woman that are probably utterly delightful, and she's made many lovely comments and done many good things. She has made some comments that some people find offensive and upsetting, and she won't back down from them. But if I made those comments quietly in my backyard, no one would judge me any differently. It's because they were said in a public place and by a public figure. And so I think we need to sometimes cut these people a little bit of slack and understand that I don't agree with what you did there, but that doesn't change you as a person.
I
don't like your action, doesn't mean I hate you.
Because
that would make me just as bad as you if that's what you're doing.
I know people who stopped reading the Harry Potter books and liking J.K. Rowling's work because she made those comments. Now, if you have a problem with those comments, that's fine.
That's completely legitimate.
That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the Harry Potter books.
Correct. 100% they don't. And what a shame to lose out on something that could introduce people to fantasy, because those are dang good books. I know some people like to dismiss them as child's fare or whatever, but they're freaking good books. And that's all there is to it. But anyway, we got well off track there. But hey, we're a book stream. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And thank you for talking to me, guys. I just say I love this. I mean, there's very few things I would stay up till 3 o'clock in the morning to do, but this is one of them because I'm passionate about it. I love it, and it's great to see other people who are different from me, who live very different lives and have very different ideas, and for us to be able to talk like this and listen to what you two have to say.
Thanks, man. Ditto. This is a lot of fun. I love doing this, and we should. Looks like Dusty got kicked out there again.
Yeah.
Hopefully, be back in a minute.
I hope we can do more in the future, either on your channel or on Dusty's, whatever.
Yeah. I'm sure. Dusty was, I think, fairly soon, like maybe within a couple weeks. I think he'll probably be done the first 15 chapters of Crown of Swords. So once he's about a week away from finishing that, I'll read those first 15 chapters, and then we can do part 1 of the chat on Mixed Mental Arts on Crown of Swords then. And also sometime fairly soon, not sure when yet, maybe a couple weeks to a month or something like that, we could talk about book 2 of Era 1 of Mistborn, which
that'll be interesting because book 2 is the one that comes in for a lot of flack. So that will be interesting. What I'd be interested to hear what you and Dusty think. I bet Dusty hates I bet he hates the romantic triangle in it. I bet he's like, that's an absolute load of rubbish. Because he's not into romance anyway, and most people agree that wasn't the best one. And so it's going to be interesting what he thinks. But Yeah, Hero of Ages, controversial book. I mean, for Sanderson, who doesn't have many controversial books. So I think that'll be a really interesting one to discuss. And one of the things about this trilogy that's really interesting, and I don't think there are many trilogies like it, book one kind of stands alone, and book two and three are clearly part one and two of the same book. Like, you need book three, otherwise book two just falls off a cliff. Whereas I think book one, you could read that on its own and be like, that was a cool book. Anyway, all right, Dusty, we're finishing up here. Are you well into Crown of Swords?
I'm on chapter 12.
Oh, you're smashing through it.
Yeah,
we
I'm
just
here.
said that maybe in a few weeks we'll when you're done, we can do part one of Crown of Swords review, and maybe in a few weeks after that, maybe do book two Mistborn over here. I also think it's cool that we get through a Wheel of
Time. Yeah, for sure, man. Like, I think I might be done with the first 15 by next weekend.
Cool. I also think it's fun that we did this very differently, didn't we? We did the Wheel of Time books like chronologically, blow by blow, and it takes us like 3-4 sessions to get through a book, and we've just blown through an entire book in one session, and we talked about loads of other stuff on tangents at the same time.
Yeah,
so
I think it works. Nice. It works because Sanderson's plot and his pacing is just so breakneck, so you can you can do it like that.
In Mistborn. Like for if we talk about Stormlight Archive, I bet regardless of what channel we do those on, that would require multiple episodes.
If we do Stormlight Archive, we need to have some kind of plan.
Pacing is so much slower.
Yes.
We either have to do parts, or we have to do let's do characters, let's do world building, or something, and split up, because those books, they would kill a small child. They're big. They're big. And the things in Brandon's books, he does his little prelude bits, his little excerpts. Like, you could have like a whole podcast on those. And there's also the things like the art in the books. Like, he's got so much art in the books compared to most writers. Like that, the chapter headings, just everything is a thing. Oh, and if you look at a Stormlight book, it's like 5 little books, 5 novels, and they're interspersed with like a series of short stories, and then with a flashback sequence themed throughout. And you're just like, oh my goodness, man, how complicated do you want to make this? And I can't believe he pulled it off even now, but he did. And the Stormlight Archive is, I believe, when all is said and done, and he's dead, which will happen one day, sadly, I think that is what will be seen as his magnum opus.
Those
books, because they're so cleverly plotted, and they're so deep, and there's so much to them. There is I think there's in many years' time, I think they're the series that people will look back at and say, maybe this guy was like a Tolkien, maybe this guy was like a Jordan. This is his testament to writing.
I hope so, man. That'd be awesome.
But if we get to that, that's got to take some time. And that's another good point. Is his 4th of the Stormlight comes out this month, so that's going to obsess my mind. I'm not going to be reading anything else for a couple of weeks while I just devour that puppy, because I'm so excited. It's have you? I guess you're not in this situation, but I know some people I won't start reading until it's done. I won't start a series until the series is complete. And I just want to say, guys, if you're like that, I understand, but I think you're missing out. And because there's something so exciting about being in a series as it's happening, and being able to theory craft with people about it as it's occurring. To be able to say, what do you think is going to happen next, when no one actually knows? And so your theory isn't just rubbish. Your theory could be it. That is brilliant. I did that with Wheel of Time. I did that with Harry Potter. I'm doing that with The Song of Ice and Fire, with Name of the Wind, and I have no regrets.
Yeah.
I'm like so excited to read this book because I'm in the middle, and it's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah. I think you'd have to wait a long fucking time for the Stormlight Archive to be completed if you wanted the whole series to be done.
I know, but there's people who are just crazy, Andrew. There's people out there who are just crazy. I saw someone who wrote in a news in like Reddit or something. He's like, I want my money back because I read Name of the Wind and The Wise Man's Fear, and I'm probably never going to see the ending. So he should pay me back for the money I spent on those stupid books. I'm like, are you a complete moron? So, like, you've just said that you liked those books, that you've read them multiple times, and you only paid $8 in the first place. So, what do you want? What more do you want for your? I don't know, maybe not $8, £8. So it'll be more like $13. Whatever. You paid $13, and you've had 12 hours, 15 hours of entertainment. Like, 12 books wouldn't get you like, I don't know. Go around an ice rink 4 times and you're done, you know? Give me my money back, stupid idiots. we take these authors for granted. We are lucky to be alive at this time when there is so much out there to read that is so high quality. And if there's something that's just good, we can ignore it because there's so many unbelievably high quality books out there.
Yeah.
Like we are spoiled for choice.
Yeah.
And
I have so much trouble wrapping my head around that reaction. I hate this author because his books are too good and now I have to wait for another one.
And he's not finishing it on my time scale. So he's evil now.
Yeah.
I saw one guy, Daniel Green did a blog on it, and like who wrote like that Robert Jordan like never intended to finish his series. He deliberately planned to die during his series so it would make it more popular. I'm like, are you a complete moron? I mean, I really can't bear it when I shouldn't talk about people like that, but my goodness, that's so trite. Like, I think this guy like planned to die. Like, shut up.
That was probably Eddie Bravo.
Oh my goodness. I just tell you, I was just glad I didn't see the guy in person because I would have had a hard time not being just an impolite jerk to anyone who can speak such lunacy. But anyway, people think I'm a lunatic, so, I should be polite to people who I think are lunatics because I'd like them to do that for me with my own insanity.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, I better call it.
All right.
I probably see the moon more often than I do the sun. Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
You're a proper night owl, aren't you, Dusty? You live in the shadows.
And you work at night.
Yeah.
Anyway, ciao, guys. I got to go to work tomorrow.
All right. Thanks for talking.
Do you have any final thoughts? And you can wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for joining us, man. This was fun. Looking forward to the next one and the next chat on Crown of Swords as well. And thanks to Dusty as well, of course. Thanks to everyone for watching who watches this. And thanks to those of you who subscribe to my channel and click the like button on the video and the bell for the notification when I release new videos. And for those of you who comment and share it everywhere. And especially to those of you who give me money on Patreon, which I greatly appreciate. And look forward to the next one on Well of Ascension and also on Mixed Mental Arts when we talk about Crown of Swords. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this. The funk cures all. And groove is in the heart. And read Mistborn. It's awesome. All right. You guys got anything else to say before we end it here?
No, just thanks for listening to us. Thanks for having us on your channel, man. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. All right. Anything from you there, Dusty?
No, just hit that bell so whenever you go live or you post new material, you'll be alerted.
All right. Thanks, man. All right, thanks, everyone, and adios until next time.